Hi, hello everybody. Welcome to our webinar. Hello, Miss Connie Maya, Miss Gaby Albores.
Hi, Angela, good morning.
Hello. Glad to see you here. Hello. Let me see who's here. Mr. David, Miss Jocelyn, Miss Elisa Silva. She's from Compartir. Elisa, thank you for being here. Miss Carla Farias, hello. Thank you for being here. Hello, Miss Adriana Soria. Hello, Miss Sandra Liliana. How are you? Mr. Jim, hello. How are you? Hi, Mr. Carlos, Miss Elizabeth Flores, hello. Glad to have you here. Welcome, everybody. We're just waiting some minutes to see if more people enters the webinar. Okay. Hello, Miss Ilse Calderon. Miss Carla Farias, hello. Miss Melissa Morales. Miss Melissa Dorame, hello, how are you? Teacher Paco, hello. Hello. Hi, hello. Hello, teacher. Thank you for being here. Miss Graciela Ángeles, hello as well. Okay. Let's see, more people is here. Miss Helen Ramos, hello. Miss Claudia Melchor, hello, how are you? Mr. Osvaldo, hello. Miss Jessica Alvarez. Hi. Glad to have you here. Miss Marisela Davila, hello, how are you? Okay. Let's wait one more minute and then we'll start. Miss Gema Aguilera, hello. Miss Aurora Magaña, Miss Alma Gastelum, how are you? How are you doing? Hello. Okay. Let's wait some more minutes. While more people enters the webinar, I'll start just explaining a little bit. Just remember that the chat will work differently this way. Sophie, who is our specialist today, has access, directly accessory to the chat. So don't doubt to write her any doubt or comment that you have. Okay, also, if you would like to participate, you can raise your hands and we will allow you to speak by unmuting your microphone. Okay, so please feel free to participate. The idea is to hear you as well. Okay, so feel free to write on the chat or ask for us to unmute your microphone and make your participation. Okay, so I see more people is in here. Teacher Aldair, hello, how are you? Miss Fernanda, Miss Catherine, Miss Andrea Casas. Okay, I think we have many people already. If you agree, Sophie, should we start now? You tell me if you're ready and I'll introduce you. Perfect. Okay, so again, thank you everybody for being here. We are thrilled to see you again. And well, I'm happy to introduce Sophie again to you. You have seen her in other webinars. Now she's again with us with the topic assessing learning. And I'll read real quickly her CV just that you get to know her better. Okay, so Sophie has a Bachelor in Educational Innovation from Universidad de las Américas Puebla, Master of Science in Educational Technology from Saarland University in Germany. She has experience as Instructional Technology Specialist and Coordinator at the American School of Puebla. She was Curriculum Design Coordinator at Centro Universitario Hispano-Mexicano, and she has worked as a teacher, researcher, and consultant in the field of education. So, as you can see, you have We have today a great specialist, and I'll let her talk now. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you, Angela, and welcome everybody. Our topic today is assessing learning. So first, I want to start by asking you a question. Do you know what works best for student achievement? I don't know if any of you have heard of a study, a very important study performed by John Hattie. It's a meta-study that took place in 2009. This researcher made a synthesis of 800 meta-analyses relating to student achievement. And the result was a ranking of 138 aspects that influence student learning, from the most positive to the least positive. So considering that our topic today is assessment, what would you think is the spot that assessment takes in how influential it is for student achievement? How important is assessment out of these 138? If you want to take a guess, just one number in between 1 and the 138, where would you position assessment? I'll be looking at the chat and see if anybody, let's see what ranges we get, some guesses. You can direct your comments to me by sending the chat to Sofia Velasquez. Second place, maybe fifth place, number 1. So you're very, very astute, because you probably think, well, the topic today is assessment. It's probably very important. I think that nowadays is important, but also learning. Yes, absolutely. So let's see. Well, the spot that it took is number 3. So very, very high on the list. And if we only look at the aspects that this researcher measured that involve the teaching domain, so those that we as teachers can actually make a difference in, and we remove the stuff that is within the student or that pertains to the school as a whole, then it is number 1. So with this, we kick off our webinar by getting this knowledge that the topic that we're discussing today is very important directly for student achievement. And specifically, not only assessment as a whole, but specifically formative assessment, providing formative assessment to students is what took this very high spot in student achievement. So the goal for our lesson today is to describe the assessment process and provide examples and strategies for assessment and feedback, specifically in distance teaching and learning, because we know this is the challenge for us teachers today. We're going to look at assessment. So what are the types of assessment? What are the methods and the types of tasks that we can use? Then we're gonna very briefly discuss summative assessment, and then we'll focus more on the formative assessment, which is more important for us right now. And for this, I'm going to present to you the methodology, the flipped classroom, because it will be very helpful to structure your classes in a way that fits what needs we're having today. Then we're gonna focus on how to give feedback. We're gonna keep it very practical. We're gonna do some strategies. And then I will demonstrate to you some digital tools, and then we'll end with some conclusions. So we'll start with a little bit of theory, of definitions, and then we'll have also a practical part. So first, we're going to discuss the types of assessment. We have formative and summative. Formative is when the student is still in the process of learning and the teacher needs to take a look at how they are progressing. How is this process coming along? And it's not only used for the benefit of students, but also for the benefit of the teacher, because with this formative assessment, teachers can change how they're doing things in order to improve instruction and help the student reach their goal. On the other hand, the summative assessment evaluates the overall competencies or the overall results of the student. And this is done at the end of a course or when the learning has already taken place. So in terms of goals, we'll see that the formative assessment's goal is to learn, to help students learn better. And in the summative assessment, our goal is to measure. Learning has taken place and we want the results. Another way of categorizing our types of assessment is by whether it's informal or formal. Very quickly, I'll explain that informal assessment is something that's more day-to-day. It can be through homework, it can be through teacher observation, by listening to the classroom discussion, and it will either take a special type of scoring, like through a checklist or through a rubric or something like that, or it may not. It may be done casually and on the go during class. On the other hand, formal assessment is usually done by testing, and these tests are used to make comparison against certain standards. So at the end of the class, have you reached the learning goal, for example? This would be a standard. In terms of methods, these categorizations help us because then we can choose how to perform this assessment. Informal assessment methods would be observation, keeping notes on the learner's performance. We can use portfolios where we keep evidence of the student's work. And as I mentioned, we use rating scales or checklists to score this type of formative assessments. It can also be performed by the student themselves, so self-assessment, or by the classmates, so peer assessment. It doesn't need to always be led by the teacher. And formal assessment, we have the tests, these different types of tests depending on the purpose. Standardized, placement, achievement, or proficiency tests. And we need both types of assessment, both methods. They help us paint an accurate picture of the student. And what we need to focus very intensely in is the purpose. Are we measuring the results at the end? Well, then we'll choose a formal instrument. If we are ongoing, if we're in the process, we will use more informal types of assessment. And in this slide right here, I just want to share with you some very specific types of activities or tasks that can help us with formative assessment or assessment in general. This is, of course, not all that is out there, but some ideas so that we can have some examples. We can have gap fill exercises, multiple choice questions, true and false questions, ordering or correcting mistakes, spelling through dictation, or we can have more complex activities such as interviews between students or with the teacher or as a group, conversations, role playing, some writing assignments, maybe letters or compositions, different projects where we have to create a product, and also the portfolios where we can keep all evidence of our work. So now that we know a lot about assessment, we've received all this information, we can think about always keeping an eye, as I mentioned, on the purpose. So here we have 4 descriptions of kinds of activities that we can do. And we're going to think about what's being evaluated and in what way. I'm going to read to you the number 1. The learners listen to a recording describing the appearance of a girl, and then they complete a picture of the girl by drawing her. So with this exercise, I want you to reflect just on your own for a second. What are we measuring here? Well, we can say that this is a listening activity. If we go back, we're English teachers mostly here, so we're teaching the English language. In here, we want to measure whether the student is able to listen for detail and understand what they're listening. In the second one, the learners complete blanks with the correct form of the verb to have. So in here, we have a type of gap fill activity because we're filling in blanks. And what we're studying would be grammar, or we can also be more specific and say we're studying the verb to have, but that's an aspect of grammar. In the number 3, we have the learners filling in sheets about their own progress. So this would be a very straightforward example of self-assessment. This can be an informal assessment method and formative. And finally, the learner looks at a simple picture story and then tells the story to the teacher. In here, we're listening to the students speak. So it's a speaking activity. Whether these activities are formative or summative, it depends mostly on context. It's whether we're doing it during the process of learning or at the end. However, I mentioned self-assessment is much more common in formative assessment, but it can also be used at the end of a course. So summative assessment, we're gonna very briefly discuss this in particular. My hope for this process is that at the end of this school year, we might be able to take care of summative assessment with more interaction in the physical presence of our students. But what happens if we don't? In distance learning, summative assessment is a little bit of a challenge, but it's not impossible, absolutely not. The important thing to consider, I'm gonna present to you the SAMR model of technology integration. The most important thing to consider in summative assessment in distance learning is that we cannot stay in this ground level of the S, which is substitution. In summative assessment in the online learning, we're going to need digital tools, but we cannot think, oh, in my classroom, I used to make, to have the students answer tests in paper. So now that they are at home, I'm just going to do this test online. It's not that simple because at home, we don't have control over the environment of our students. We don't know if they have a quiet room to take the test in, if they can open other tabs in their internet browser and look at Google, look at some resources, open their book. So answering a question that is maybe multiple choice or something like that is not a very smart idea for online learning. So what I suggest in this stage, if you reach the point where you need a summative assessment, is to try to move higher in this model towards the redefinition stage. This is where technology allows for the creation of new tasks that were previously inconceivable. So we won't be doing the multiple choice exam that we used to do in the classroom. We might have to create an authentic task that focuses on the application of the content, of the language content that we have been reviewing. This is also an opportunity to have students create something new. So if we're focusing on language communication, they can create a poster, they can create a book, they can create something that uses digital tools. And in this way, we might involve critical thinking skills, not just the levels of memorization. We can even make it something collaborative. So we don't have to worry about whether our students are able to communicate during a test, but maybe this is something desirable, communication and collaboration. And finally, the most important is it doesn't matter if they copy. If we're not doing a test in a controlled environment, then we better embrace that and focuses on activities where they can research. They might need to use their book, they might need to look up some things in their dictionary or whatever resources they can get their hands on, as long as they are able to reach the goal of the assignment. So we reach formative assessment. For this, as I mentioned, I'm going to present to you the flipped classroom. Why is it called a flipped classroom? We've heard about this before. It's been mentioned in other seminars, so I'm going to be very quick just in case you haven't seen this information before. It's called a flipped classroom because, let's see, on the traditional classroom, the class time when we are all together, the teacher and the students, is mostly used to provide content. So the teacher is most likely giving a lecture or presenting information, and the students are very passive and they need to listen. And then we send them home to work on some tasks or some homework. And then the student is applying a knowledge that it's newly acquired, and they're by themselves, they're alone. When flipping the classroom, we do it the other way around. So we send the student home with some materials that they need to review on their own, at their own pace. They can go slower, they can go faster, they can rewatch a video, for example, several times. And then we use the class time, the synchronous time where we're all together, to actually apply some of that content, to do formative assessment, to check in, how did they do, did they understand, are there questions, to get feedback from students and from teachers to provide feedback to students. And this last bit that I have here in my arrow in the middle, SEL, it's the social and emotional learning. So this is also a time where we can check in with students and see how they're feeling, how they are progressing. Are they anxious? Are they stressed with the amount of work that we're having? All of these things are also important to consider when we're all together. And then after class, the student is by themselves again, and they can do follow-up activities, they can practice some more. In this context, when we're talking about learning, virtual learning, the part where we are together as a group would be also online, but this is the synchronous session. So if you are not doing that yet, I suggest that you plan some time for synchronous work with your students, but let's make sure or try to avoid trying to keep a very rigid schedule where we have long synchronous sessions. It has also been mentioned before, but both students and teachers are overwhelmed right now. We have a lot of work. We have activities to grade, but the students have activities to finish. They have a lot of stuff to do. So we shouldn't feel like if our online session doesn't last a full hour, it means that we're not doing our job. Both teachers and students are doing more things. So one question that I am asked frequently about the flipped classroom is how to make sure that students actually do the work that they have to do pre-class, so before any interaction takes place, and how do we help them learn better from it. So I have an image here from Field of Dreams, because my suggestion to you is that if you assess it, they will come. Basically, if you are grading this pre-class work, then they will do it. And this not only encourages our students to actually do this work, but it helps them learn better from it. And how can we assess something when we're saying that the student is just familiarizing himself or herself with the material? How is it fair to provide a score? Well, my suggestion to you is that you do an assessment that is effort-based. So one idea is to provide a different number of points. So 0 would be if you did not bother answering the questions about the pre-class work. And maybe you get 1 point if you answered, but I, as a teacher, didn't see a rationale for your answer, an explanation, or I didn't see you use any of the information or the concepts that were mentioned in the video or the learning material. This is regardless of whether the answer was correct or incorrect. If you didn't explain it or you didn't use any of the information provided, then you'll get a lesser grade. And the higher grade or score, maybe 2 points, will be if the questions are answered with a reason and with information or terminology from the material. So in here, it's not about whether it's right or wrong, but about if you actually reviewed the material and are using it. Another suggestion for pre-class work, this has been mentioned before, is the importance of using small chunks. There's a law called Miller's Law that argues that our memory, our short-term memory, is limited, and there are only a small number of things that we can keep in our memory. So how can we help our students take these items and try to push them into long-term memory in an easier way. Well, that would be through the second term that you see in my slide, retrieval practice, which is basically practice for the memory. So the student can immediately go and grab stuff from memory that is very recently. So these two things, these two suggestions complement each other. If we're sharing a video and it's kind of long, we might want to chunk it. So divide in different ways so that it's shorter and the information is grouped in small sequences. And then we will try to add some questions that can be multiple choice or short answers or true or false that helps the students very quickly practice with this information that is in their memory. So for instance, even if the video is saying about the house and saying that the house is red, we might stop this video and ask, what color is the house? And the answer is red. So even this effort of grabbing the information that I just listened and having to use it again is a practice, and in the long term will help students be better at reviewing these materials. And research has also shown that they tend to take more notes when we ask these type of questions during pre-class materials. Okay, so this takes us to a process that I call just-in-time teaching. As I mentioned, we have discussed pre-class work. This is what takes place, the videos or readings that the students are doing on their own. We can select it, for instance, using apps like or websites like YouTube. YouTube is full of lots of English content, lots of learning materials, educational videos, so we can choose from there. Second step would be to embed the assessment. And for that, in a moment, I'm going to show you an application that can help us. What type of assessment do we need? As I mentioned, some simple questions. And these numbers that you see here is that the minimum that I suggest would be to include 2 questions about the content. So a specific question, what is the color of the house, for example, and 1 feedback question about metacognition, about how the students are learning. For example, what was the most difficult part to understand? Or what are you still curious about? What was the hardest part? Or what did you enjoy or find interesting? And this is very helpful to you, for you teacher, in the next step, which is reviewing the feedback. Before you can go online and actually interact with your students, it's very useful that you already have their answers. And this is why technology is so useful, because we will have the answers readily. When you are reviewing the feedback, you'll see if there are some mistakes that a lot of your students are making, or that some concept was not clear, or if you ask what was the hardest part, maybe many of them are having difficulties with the same issue. So that's in the last part where we address difficulties during the synchronous time of the lesson. And this is where we will look. I'm going to show you an app right now that's called Edpuzzle. And for the last part, just to mention, this would take place on your synchronous lesson, which you might be having through Skype, through Meet, Zoom, the different tools that helps us with this. Before I show you the application, I'm going to just take a quick look at the chat. Is it a good idea to send the grammar? Yes, absolutely. We can send the grammar rules. We can send them through a video, for instance, with some examples, so that the student is already familiar with the concept. This does not mean that we expect them to be experts when they reach our online class, but that they are familiar with this. And then we can use our synchronous time to practice, to ask questions, everything else. Okay, so let's go to Edpuzzle. this is a very, very interesting tool to promote exactly what we were discussing about retrieval practice. So I'm showing you now the view of the student. I already shared a link. So this is something that you could share with your class through your class in Stella, for example, or different communication tools. And this is an open class. What does that mean? It means that the student does not have to create an account. And I think some of you find this useful, because if we have younger students or the parents at home are not very savvy in technology, creating an account can be a little bit of a struggle. So this, we go directly and the student just has to write a nickname. So let's say that this is student Juan, and he can join the class. And immediately they have the content. This is just a sample video that I found on YouTube about public speaking so that we can have an example. In here, we have the questions that I have embedded for retrieval practice during the video. So I'm going to play the video. This video has a little bit of music, so I suggest that you lower your volume so that you can sense how loud it is, and then you can adjust it so that it doesn't hurt your ears or something. Okay, here we go. Okay, so here we see our first question. If you were following along, you might have an idea. How is Delia feeling? Is she worried? Is she angry? Or is she excited? This is a very simple question. It's not crucial knowledge, but we are checking that the student is actually paying attention. So I'm going to choose one. Let's say the student thinks that she's excited because he read the word excited. And then we have this button here for the next question. And it asks why. Okay, why? Because she needs to give a speech. So she's excited. I'm going to submit. So in here we have immediate feedback for students that are for questions that are multiple choice. So in here, it's already telling us that the right answer was worried, not excited. For open-ended question, it just say to be graded because the teacher has to grade it. Okay, so we can also see here that they have the option to rewatch. So if they didn't answer correctly, they might have the need to go back and rewatch. We're just going to continue. Okay, we have another question now. What's a synonym for rehearse? So in here, I'm touching on vocabulary as well, but it's also a comprehension question because they mention both words, rehearse and practice. So in the context, we may say the synonym is practice. And it immediately lets us know that the answer is correct. Next question, is it a bad idea to display emotions when public speaking? We'll see. Let's say true. So no, because what the tip that we just read is that we should not have a neutral tone and we can show excitement. And we reached the end of the video. And here I added some feedback questions, like I mentioned before. What did you find interesting in this material? I can say, for instance, eye contact. Some students will do longer or shorter answers. We depend on the English level. Next question, what are you still curious about? Memorizing the material, for example. So how do I do that? Okay, next question. They both hate to be graded. And we also have, again, the opportunity to rewatch as many times as the student wants. Rewatch the video. Another important thing to mention is that one setting that we can include in Edpuzzle is to prevent skipping. So then the students cannot move and just skip ahead to the end of the video or just to the questions. We make sure that they at least have the video running all this time. So I hope this you find this activity useful. I'm going to show you right now in the other window over here. Here it is the teacher view. So how did I create this Edpuzzle? As I said, the video comes from YouTube. And one of the opportunities that you have when you use this tool is to cut the video. So if it's very long and you have stuff that you don't need, I even made a cut myself in the video. That's why at some point you heard a difference maybe in the music because it was longer. So this is useful to do also the thing we mentioned about chunking, making our videos shorter. Another thing that we can do is we can add voiceover to the videos. So in this video that I shared with you, we had text, but we couldn't hear the voice. So the teacher could go into the video to edit and record their own voice. Or if there's, for instance, 2 characters, maybe with the help of somebody at home, we can make a conversation and record it. So students can also have the benefit of listening to the language. Here is where I have my class. As I mentioned, it's an open class. I'm going to see that the students here, and some have already watched this video. And if I go to see the question, I will see the results. So I can see that nobody who answered my quiz had the questions correct. Okay, so far. And this can help me prepare for my online meeting. I'm going to show you here the class, and here we can see if there are new answers. So this is how it looks like. She has to speak in public. And this is the open-ended questions. We can say that it's correct or not correct, or change the amount of points that we're giving, and comments. Okay, so this is Edpuzzle. We're going to go back to our PowerPoint. Here we go. And I'm going to share with you another technology tip. Breakout rooms. I don't know if you've heard of this before, but once we reach the online session that we're doing, we might want to have our students work in small groups. We might not always want to be just a teacher in the center and every student is paying attention just to the teacher. So breakout rooms are, it's an option that some of the virtual conferencing programs give us, such as Zoom. It gives us the option to create additional rooms for a smaller number of students to work together. If you're the teacher, then you are in control of assigning the groups, setting a duration for the activity, and pop in to monitor what they're doing, listen to their conversation, whatever you need to do, and give some assessment even for the smaller groups. You can also have the control to bring them back into the main group when you have finished the activity. Why is this useful? Well, it can be used for collaboration. It can be used for differentiation. So for instance, if you're doing conversation practice, you might have more advanced students and less advanced students. So you might group them together so that they can have a conversation at the same level, or many different differentiation options that we can use. We can use these breakout rooms for peer review and feedback. So perhaps in your lesson, you made a big comment, a general comment about some mistakes that they're having, and then they can go into the breakout room and discuss among themselves more specific feedback. There's also the think, pair, share technique. I think many of you have probably heard of it. It can be useful in online learning as well. This is when first there's a thinking phase. We give the student a minute or two to think about an issue, maybe something they looked at in the video that we shared before class. Then there's the pair phase where they go with a peer or a classmate and they discuss their ideas about this video, for example. And the last one is share. They come back to the rest of the class and share what they discussed. This is useful in video conferencing because if we already had students who maybe were a little bit shy in the physical classroom, the video conferencing program might give them a little more shyness, a little more struggle to participate in front of everybody. So this can be an opportunity to have students work with a classmate that maybe they have more a better rapport with, and then come back and one of them will share with the class, maybe the more outgoing one, the more extroverted one could be. So let's summarize a little bit what we have so far about assessment in the flipped classroom. First, we mentioned since the beginning the purpose. The purpose is important. This process means that we start with good learning objectives. Then we think about what would be acceptable evidence that students have reached these goals. And finally, we design ways of gathering that evidence. When we're working online, this takes us to our point number 2, which is choosing the right tools. There is a huge advantage, which is that we are already working with students that have one device at home available. We don't know if it's a laptop, a desktop computer, a tablet, a cell phone, but they have something that during our class they can use individually, and they are connected to the internet. This is a very amazing opportunity because we didn't always have this option in the physical classroom. Maybe we only had 1 hour in computer class and that's it, or we had some iPads, but we didn't have one per student, so they had to share. This is an opportunity. For sharing technology tools that we're using, the key is to have a little bit of a routine, but also some variety. You don't want your students or yourself to have to learn one technology tool every day. We have to have some, that would be very time consuming. So we need to have some repetition of the tools that we use. But we don't want it to be boring. We don't want to have just one that we are always using again and again. So balance is key. We need to find a little middle ground where we have 2 or 3 tools that we are familiar with and that we use. Are these breakout rooms available in Meet? I do not think that Meet has this functionality, but there are others. Other than Zoom, there are other softwares for video conferencing that have them. Zoom is the one that I'm familiar with, but we can always ask Google about this later on. Okay, and then we have to use the frequent and small approach. Don't wait to give formative assessment until you are assigning a huge complicated assignment or homework. No, you can just send a very quick online quiz, couple of questions, see if they're paying attention, see if they understood, ask them if they liked it, if it was difficult, if they're interested in it. And it can be just very, very frequent and small. And also don't feel like you have to register everything. Some of it you will just use. It won't matter if it was Juan who made this specific comment. It's just useful for me to adjust my teaching and make decisions. Another idea is the pre-formative assessment. This is one way of calling these questions like we just saw on Edpuzzle, because these are already some formative assessment, but this is taking place before the actual interaction with the teacher, before the class. So this is why we call it pre-formative assessment. And finally, remember to act on and share the data you collect. Not all of it, but an amount that is useful for students. First off, you have to act on it as a teacher by adjusting your instruction, making decisions. Is this topic clear? Can I move on? Do I need to reteach? What do I do? And also share it, because as we mentioned before, formative assessment is just as useful for the teacher as the student. So they also need to know how they're doing, what they need to change. And we do this through feedback. So we've discussed formative assessment. We see that this is something that we need to do frequently, but how do we actually give this back to the student? Okay, so we do it through feedback. It is the information that we provide the learner, and the focus of feedback is to reduce the gap between the place where the student currently is in their learning process and the goal where we want him to arrive, the outcome. And for this, I'm going to quickly show you a short video with 6 teacher-approved tips for feedback. So this, once again, has a little bit of music, not voice. So adjust your sound accordingly, please, so it's not too loud for you. Okay, here we go. Perfect. So that was the video. I hope you found it useful. These are some strategies and tips that come from very experienced teachers. So yes, it is a hard thing to balance. We want to give our students very detailed feedback that they can use, but we can also not drown ourselves in work, because then we will never finish. And an important aspect of feedback is also that it comes at the right time. We don't want to be giving our students feedback once they've completely forgotten about the activity, or they're already taking maybe a formal exam about it. No, it needs to be frequent and in small doses, a little bit at a time. So this is why it's useful to not give detailed feedback in every single assignment. Then you can optimize your time better. Also, the thing that the video mentioned about self and peer assessment is very, very useful and productive, because it not only saves the teacher some time, but it also gives the students the opportunity to actually practice much more. Teaching others or giving feedback to others is a very higher thinking skill. So they're also learning. They're not just helping us out with our work. And of course, as always, the teacher still has to monitor how self-assessment and peer assessment is taking place. So for instance, with the option of breakout rooms, this is one way to have peers give feedback to each other, but the teacher is still monitoring. So it's not like we really save ourselves the work. On top of these suggestions that we share right now, I have some more that I added to make feedback simpler. A very important one that I found is that when you see a common mistake about several of your students, do not provide individual feedback. You're going to be wasting your time. It's more useful to reteach. So use a little bit of your precious synchronous time with your students, have them all together, and touch on some common themes on their mistakes. Or you can also find another bit of material, a little video, some examples, different things that you can share with them to address this particular issue. And you also can, reteach, sorry, I was going to repeat myself, reteach during your synchronous lesson. Another suggestion is to not do the thinking for them. Sometimes we go a little overboard with our detailed feedback, and then the student has no reflection left to do. They have all the answers, all the suggestions, everything, and they are not reflecting more. So for example, instead of marking every punctuation error in their homework, then maybe you can just mark one and write a little comment. Please review that you use the punctuation that we saw in class. And then the student has to actually review the work and find the other mistakes. And then we are doing feedback easier, faster, and they are also having to think and reflect on their own. Another suggestion is to create opportunities for students to request feedback. As we mentioned before in just-in-time teaching, we can also think about this as just-in-time feedback. We are not going through all of the students and provide feedback to maybe some that are doing well and they don't need it, but we provide it to the students that have requested it. In here, technology also helps us with this process. We're going to see in a minute. And lastly, another suggestion is to check and not grade formative assessment. Students are not done learning when we're doing formative assessment. We are supposed to be still in the process. So it's more useful to just adjust your teaching, make sure that you cover the points that are still not so clear, and keep going. So as I mentioned before, for number 3, technology is useful. We can use Stella for this point. We can create opportunities for students to request feedback by creating a help forum in our Stella. So let's go there. Over here. Here is Stella. For those of you who are users of Stella, it's our learning platform. This is my teacher view. And a comment from Silvia Bravo. Can you please put the video again, please? we are going to, I think I will put the link on the chat at the end so that you can view it later, and we don't use our time for that. But yes, I will absolutely share it with you. Okay, so back on Stella. This is my teacher view, and I'm going to go inside my classes, and I'm going to show you how a forum can help us create opportunities for students to create feedback. So I'm going to go into my 5th grade English class. These forums are available in every level, in preschool, in primary, secondary, high school, everywhere we can create them. And depending on the level, maybe it will be the parents that are doing the writing for their younger kids, but it can help us make sure that we are connected with the students and that when they have a question, they have somebody to reach. So in here, we have I'm going to make this slightly bigger so we can see better. In our first view within the class, I can already see that I have a forum and there's some news, some new developments here. If I go to the forum view, I will see the one that we created, the help forum. I'm going to open it and read the description that I added. It says, welcome students. Do you have a question about our class, the homework, the digital tools we're using, or any of the topics we are working on? You can post it here. I will check this page twice a day from 10 to 11 a.m. and from 6 to 7 p.m., for example, to answer. I might also tell you to wait until our meeting to address it as a group. Those of you who help answer another classmate's questions will earn points in our Class Dojo. If you've heard of Class Dojo, you know what I mean. Otherwise, we're going to look at it in a minute. In the area of helping others. So what I created here is a space where students can write their questions, and I will make sure to check it twice and answer those questions that are urgent, that are very individual or very specific. And if there are common topics, question, something wasn't clear, something they're not understanding, then I will just address it in the virtual meeting so that I don't answer the same thing over and over again. Or I might choose to share here in the forum also a little explanation, a little audio recording where I explain what this issue might be. And I'm also giving the students the option of answering each other, and they can participate in the forum and answer other students' questions. So here in the sample that I created, we have one student asking, hi, is this sentence correct? I'm not sure. The Titanic was the biggest and expensivest ship in the world. And it is another student who answers these questions and says, the Titanic was the biggest and most expensive ship in the world. Depending, again, on the level of our students, they will ask different questions. They will ask maybe, what's the homework and what page did I need to read? Anything like that that is easy to answer. Another student might answer before you, and that's very useful. Or if not, then in your office hours, virtual office hours, then you come and address it yourself. Okay, if you have any questions up until this point, please remember we have the chat and you can share them with me and I'll try to answer. So, so I have something here. It says, so a simpler feedback to the students could be a short video made by our own saying, well done to all. Yep. Yes, this is one option. Let's remember, in feedback, there are different kinds as well. If we give praise, it's also feedback. So if we say, well done, congratulations, you're on the right track, this is also feedback. But the most useful kind of feedback is detailed feedback, the one that is aimed at progress. So how do I help you? you're in point A, how do I get you to point B, which is the learning goal? So yes, in terms of methodology, how do we give this feedback to students? It can be written word, it can be orally. As I said, we can record a voice note or a small tiny podcast where we address this and we share it in Stella. Or it can be, it's been mentioned in other webinars as well, we can do some screencasts. So if there's an app that they need to do, or if there's a written assignment that you have, you can record yourself going through the exercise and explaining every aspect that is difficult for students to work at home. About how to create the forum, there's a question about that, so I'm going to go back here in Stella. This, I showed you the forum that I had already prepared, but creating one is very quick and simple. We just go to Nuevo Tema. We write a title, a description, which would be all the instructions or how we're going to work with this forum. Here, it gives us the option to add a start and an end date. If we are doing a help forum, my suggestion is to close this because we want it to be open and growing and available throughout the next few weeks. There's no end time. And then we come here to save or guardar. And that's it. We can add here some text features, colors, sizes, whatever, and we're done. If I go back to mine, we'll see that the way to add to the conversation is also with a text box like the previous one. They don't have to create a new forum or something. They just come to see this box. They will see it, our students will see it in their profile as well. Start writing and just send it here. Can they include recordings in the forum? We have, for instance, this option of sharing links. So if we have a video somewhere, we can share it. We can paste images. We can share lots of different things in here. Okay, so next I'm going to show you. Let me just take you for a second back to our PowerPoint. Oops, sorry. Okay. Sorry for the delay, just. Okay, here we go. So let's see what other digital tools we can share. We've already seen a couple. We've mentioned also the breakout rooms. Let's see what we have here. We have some assessment apps. The first one, I created this table this way. I thought we're discussing the flipped classroom. Remember, we have the pre-class work, we have the online learning session, so a Zoom meeting, a Hangouts meet, all of these. And then we have the after. So which technology tools might help us in each of these stages of our flipped classroom? We've already seen Edpuzzles. So this can help us with pre-class material and retrieval practice. We're gonna look at Google Forms as well, so we can create quizzes. If the type of questions that Edpuzzle helps us create is not enough, we want something more sophisticated, we can look at Google Forms. I will show you an example. And during the class, we can use these apps. So I'm gonna go to Class Dojo now. This is a very exciting tool. I like it quite a bit. So I'm going to show you first how it looks like here for, oops, sorry. that was my. Okay, this is the student view. I want my teacher view. Here it is. Oh. Okay, finally, here we are. So what is ClassDojo? ClassDojo is an online behavior management system, and it is intended to foster positive students' behaviors and classroom culture. So this is like the formal description of what the app is. But here we have to focus on the fact that online learning is a new experience for most of us as teachers and most of our students as well. And they might require a little bit of extra structure, extra discipline, extra feedback on their behavior. So this app can help us do that. Many teachers use this app on their physical classrooms, but there's no reason why we couldn't use it during a Zoom class or a Meet class. So let's see what it is about. I'm gonna just use the demo class, which comes with your standard teacher account. It's a free account. There are also paid versions that include more features, but the free account is very good already. And this is my sample class. So I have these 5 students, which are cute little monsters, and I can also select the whole class. What's the point of this? When I select a student, let's say I select Justin, I have these points that I can award. If he was a fast worker, helping others, showing etiquette, I created this specifically for online learning. If he's on task, participating, being persistent, prepared, punctual, showing teamwork, or working hard. As a teacher, you can always edit more skills. And then there are the not so positive skills, needs work. We could not use this. If you prefer to just keep everything positive, it's okay. Or we can have some if maybe the behavior requires it. So I have 2, that is distracting others and inappropriate language. Oh, there's a mistake, sorry. Inappropriate language or behavior. So if we have, for instance, middle schoolers using a chat with their classmates for the first time, they might get a little bit overexcited and use language that is not very nice, or they could be saying mean things to each other, or they could be making faces on the camera and distracting others. We can use these points to show the student that this is not correct. And I added this one that is off task with a 0 value, which is neutral, so that it's just more of a warning, because this behavior is not as bad as the other 2. For example, if I wanted to add more, then I can just keep adding skills. So let's say that Justin is participating in class. Well, I might give him this point. And this is the main feature of ClassDojo, these points. If my whole class came to the meeting, let's say using Google Meet punctually, then they will all earn a punctuality point. These little behavioral tools are very useful to actually change behavior in our students. So if they're showing up late, if they have this feeling still that since they're at home, then it kind of feels like they're on vacation, we can use this to sort of guide them towards more positive learning behavior. What other options do we have on ClassDojo other than just the points? We have below here, okay. We have the toolkit. It's a little behind for me. There it is. Okay, so we have these options. One that I really like is this one that says directions. In here, I can create a little 2-step instructions or 3 steps. I just come here, name it, add an item. and then I will show it. This is made for projectors in classrooms, but we can use it in our virtual classroom. So I already created this one. It's called Welcome Class. Welcome to class, how are you? First, please say hi, then turn off your microphone. So here we're already setting the tone. Our class is about to begin, and we are creating with our students a little bit of a routine. Always when you come in class, you say hi, and then you turn off your mic. And we can add other things. For example, raise your hand if you want to open your mic and participate. Because if everybody has the mic open, then maybe the dog is barking, the little brother is crying, then we have a lot of noise in our room. So this is the instruction. We have also, this other one today is similar. It's just to start the morning with something, some comment. This one is already created. I can create as many as I want. Then also below here, I have attendance. So I already gave them a point for punctuality, but I have attendance here. And I can say who came to class and who didn't. So maybe Jennifer isn't in class today, or Leonardo isn't in class today. And there it is. I saved the attendance. Oh, I did it the other way around. Mark all present. And you are absent. Okay, because otherwise we have a very, very empty class. And also we have this random generator. So if we're in our meeting and nobody wants to participate, we might choose a student at random. And it takes us to this window to give them points. So my idea was to immediately give a point for participating, because Denzel, now you have to answer my question live. Okay, so this is something that can be helpful. And this is not the only functionality in ClassDojo. We can also go here to portfolios. And we mentioned portfolios as a way of creating formative assessment. This is a very useful tool. So we can have our students either just send something without a prompt, without any instruction from us, or we can create activities. I'm going to show you one that is already created. And I asked, what did you have for breakfast today? I want to know. You may write your answer or use audio recording. Please use vocabulary from our food unit, for example. So this can be a very quick, very small activity that the students do, depending on their level, depending on the type of activity that we're doing. Here I have one student that sent a text, and it says banana, yogurt, and oatmeal. When I, as a teacher, get this submission, I have to approve it so that it appears on the portfolio for this student. Or I can add a comment with a little feedback for this student. I'm going to approve it. Yeah, so I can go to the next one. And this student decided to take a photo. This student, which is myself.
I had cereal.
I had cereal for breakfast. So this is another way of answering our portfolio, and another one with text. So this is how it's done. This one is the one that I approved. These ones are not yet approved. How do I create an activity like this? Just go to create activity, give it a name. For example, I can say feelings. Share how you are feeling today. Use written text or an audio recording. We also have video, we have drawings, whatever we want. We can just give some instruction for the students. And I assign it to class. How does this show up on the student side? Well, I'm going to show you very quickly where it is. Okay. Oops. Here it is. I had lost it for a second. Thank you for waiting. I'm going to show you the application. Students have two ways of participating in Class Dojo. They have their, oh, it went away. As I was saying, they can download an application on a tablet or a phone, or they can also use a link. Okay, here we go. Here we go. Now you can see my cell phone screen, and this is the Class Dojo app. And here, my group has already logged in. They just had to use a specific link for my class. And then the student chooses their own name. So for instance, let's say this is Jennifer. And it takes her to her own profile and to the activities that are created for her. This is very useful for younger kids as well, because they don't have to have a particular login, so an extra user and password to memorize. And here they go to the activities and they can see that they already completed the breakfast question and they have the feelings question. So here they can read the instructions, start their assignment, and they can have the option of writing something. I'm happy. They can take a photo, or they can make a drawing here with some tools. I'm not gonna keep this. And we can also have the red button that allows us to record our voice. So these are all the options that the student can use to send their submission to the portfolio. Once they have sent it, I'm going to go back to the class view, and the teacher will have here this submission, as we showed again. And I can approve it or send a comment. I'm glad you're feeling happy, for example. Okay, so I'm going to close this. And we're going to see another tool. We're going to Socrative. So I don't know if any of you have used Socrative before. This is a very, very good tool. Why is it good? Because it's useful, it's easy to use, and you can just jump right in. There is not too much setup that you need to do. Yes, we have a teacher, Connie, who has already used this tool. There are two previous questions. I will address them in a little bit later because we're gonna go back to looking at Stella in a bit, so I will address them there. First, with Socrative, we have this view. This is the teacher view, and I can just launch a quiz that I've created, a space race, which is against time, so we compete. We can have a predefined exit ticket for our online meeting, or we can have just one quick question. You can see the answers synchronously at the time they are answering. Exactly, yes, we have this in this area where it says results. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to share with you in the chat a link so that you can join me here. Here it is, the login, oh, sorry. The login for students. I'm going to bring it in the chat so that you can join me here in my teacher room in Socrative, and you're going to do a small feedback for me. We have, this is the free account, so we have a limit of 50 participants. So if more of you are willing to join me here, oh, sorry, I sent it privately. Here it goes again, the link for everybody on the chat. Please copy and paste that on a browser or anywhere, on your computer, on your phone, and you can join me in the quiz. I'm going to launch, while you do that, if you already opened the link, you have to add these letters and numbers right here on top to join my room. There it is, a little bit larger. I hope that's useful to you. And while you do that, I'm going to activate a quiz. So I prepared a little quiz called Assessment in Virtual Learning. And here is where I'm going to see if you have been paying attention to my webinar. I hope you have. But don't worry about it, just a little bit of a heads up. There are some multiple choice questions that have more than one answer, just so you are warned about that. Okay, so I'm going to click next. I'm going to choose 4 teams with auto assign, and you're going to have to give a name, and you can see your question feedback and your final score. And I start. So if you are already on the room, thank you, Angela, for showing the room letters and numbers. This is the room code. So you're gonna come in here, and when one of you or many of you hopefully start answering questions, these little rockets are going to show progress, and we'll see if we have a team that reaches the end first. I'm also going to, okay, we have the peach team already making some progress, magenta team as well, blue. Let's see, take your time, think about it a little bit. It's not long. I think it's 4 questions, I believe. In here, since we are showing this space race and we have teams, we are not looking at the individual answers that are showing up. We just see, in this case, how quick we can answer. All the teams are doing quite well. They're not falling behind, so I'm glad about that. Remember that you can give more than one answer in the multiple choice questions. For those of us who couldn't join us in the Socrative website, don't worry, I will show the quiz here as well so that you can see what questions our participants are answering. Almost done. It will be Line team. Line team finished faster. Congratulations, whoever is in the Line team. I'm very glad that you finished and understood the questions. So we can go here. I'm gonna give you a few more seconds so that the other teams can finish the quiz. And then I will finish it so that we can see some functionalities here in Socrative. Okay, we're gonna finish our activity. Perfect. And here we have what everybody answered. And as a teacher, you have the option of showing the names of the people who participated or not showing them. So in here, we're gonna leave it anonymous, but it's very useful. I find it very cool that you can adjust this. And even not only here in the webinar, but also when you're with your students, it might not motivate students to be showcased here, and maybe they did a little bit poorly and they're embarrassed. So it's very nice that we can keep the numbers hidden, but we can still see how we did some overall percentages. So for example, in here, question number 3 was a little bit hard because not many people had it. And I can show the answers. So in here, I can see that the hardest question was question number 3. And if I go to look at it, I can click on it and see. The question was, what characteristics should a summative assessment have in a virtual environment? Select all that apply. So here is what the people answered. And in the explanation, we can see if our summative assessment depends on a controlled environment, it won't work at home. So multiple choice exam is not useful. It is, one of the correct answers was B. It is not a problem if students research or the internet or use their books, because we are not doing a multiple choice exam. It measures the product of student learning. This is an important characteristic of summative assessment, and it can be graded quickly. It would be amazing, but sometimes in summative assessment, it's gonna take a little longer, particularly if we're asking students to create a product, to have an authentic task, then it will take a little bit longer to grade. Okay, so I'm gonna go back to the results table, and I'm going to show you the quiz directly, so that you can see a little bit of how I did it. This is the one I created, assessment in virtual learning. So question number 1 was, which of the following is the most important to consider when choosing technology for your teaching? The purpose and the learning goal. It's a little tricky because everything is important, but the purpose is the main thing. It's where we have to begin. Summative assessment is impossible in virtual learning? No, it isn't. We just have to reimagine what summative assessment can be. What characteristics should summative, we checked this one, so it was B and C. And lastly, what characteristics should formative assessment have in a virtual environment? That it's done frequently and it has a clear purpose. It's not always performed by the teacher because it can be self or peer assessed, and it's not normally part of the formal grade. It can take a small percentage, but not necessarily. Sometimes, like I did with this little quiz, I'm not going to give it a grade. It's just useful for me to see what was clear and what wasn't. Yes, Miss Graciela, thank you for participating. Miss Graciela has to go, which lets me look at the time. We have very limited time now, so I'm just going to show you one more thing in Stella before we finish. Okay, so I'm going to go back to my browser and I'm going to go back to Stella. Here is where we were looking at the forum. So we were talking about Google Forms, using Google Forms for quizzes. I'm going to show you an activity that I already have here in Stella. Remember also, I showed you the link to Socrative for you to play with me, to play with my quiz, using the chat. So in your virtual lesson, you might have also a chat where you can share links. But if you can't, then you can also have them in Stella. This is also something that you can do. You can create an activity, and one of your start of lesson instructions can be for them to always have Stella open and ready to go, so that they can very quickly go find a link or go find a resource that they need during the class. The activity that I created here, it's called comprehension, and I used some resources. One resource that is already available in Stella, and the other one is an outside source, which is Google Forms. So my question, or my instruction, sorry, says, hi students, we're going to do a listening activity. You will need to first open the paper plane video that you have below. So it's this resource. You may view the video as many times as you need. And then you will click on the paper plane quiz. and answer a few questions about the video. That's it. So here, the students already from reading the description, they know what's expected of them, and they have the resources right here. So here, the video, I'm not going to show it. I'm going to remove the volume. Yeah, I'll just run it a few seconds so that you see what type of video it is. It's from Richmond Cartoons.
Quiet, everyone. I'm going to check if everyone's done their homework. So, take out your homework. Make sure your email addresses are on them. I'm going to email you the results of your tests.
Okay, so just a little sneak peek at the video. It's an animated video and it's a little long, so it's a longer assignment for more advanced students. And we can close this. And the students will watch this video. They might watch it 2-3 times, and then they go into the quiz. And in here, we're using a Google form to create some comprehension questions about the video that the students just saw, the paper plane. So it asks at what time, where, when, how many students, and what subject. We didn't see the full video, but this is information that the students are supposed to identify in the length of the video. I'm going to show you what happens when we answer. So I'm going to select some things. We don't know if this is correct or incorrect. And I'm going to send it. And once I do, I have to click here on see my score. And then I can see as a student, well, I only had 2 correct answers because I didn't watch the video. And I can see in instant feedback as to whether I answered correctly here in green, or if I was mistaken and what was the correct answer. We should encourage our students to wait to do the quiz until they've actually watched the video and they have paid attention and everything, so that this information is actually useful. This I will show you. I have also, I even have a question on the chat about where to find the Richmond cartoons. And I'm going to take advantage of that to show you also where I found these questions, because I did not come up with these questions by myself. I did a little trick. So here in my class, if I go to temas, I have my folder. I look at English, and I can use this search box here to find, for example, the word Richmond, so that we don't have to look through the full range of folders. So here I am in Richmond Cartoons, and I can see the one that I used is the paper plane. And here in additional resources, I have the same thing in video as just audio without the image. And I have here some activities that are already designed for this resource. So what I did was take the listening activity. If I open it, I can see that it is a PDF. So this is something that in the physical classroom could have been printed out, and it could have been a handout that the students work with their pencil. But now we cannot do that. And in these times, it's a little complicated to assume that every home has a printer, that the parents are able to print something and have ink in the printer and everything ready to go. So it will be, or for instance, that they have some application to annotate this PDF, so edited digitally. As teachers, that might be a little bit more complicated to gather this assignment if we had just sent the PDF with the student. So what I did was take these questions and transform them into my Google form. And this also has the very important benefit that I can have all the answers already collected. We can have graphs, we can have This is very helpful for this process that I was mentioning, where you as a teacher look at the feedback and make decisions. It's very easy to do if you have it all together and you have a graph or something very quickly. I'm going to show back to school here how this quiz was created. Here is the editor view, let's say. We can, all my questions were multiple choice, but we could have other types of questions. And in here, I have some answers. So this is what I was telling you about. We can have some graphs. We can see what percentage of my students answer accurately, how many had a mistake, what question was the easiest, what question was the hardest, for example. For example, in this one, what subjects everybody answered correctly. So I can say, okay, this part of the video was very clear, but this one only 50-50, so maybe I need to pay more attention to that. And as I said, even if we're using outside resources, we can have everything here in Stella. We can have it all together in a single activity like I showed here. So I'm going to go back. Sorry, I'm just gonna check the chat real quick. I remember I had a question. Yes, what is the difference between Richmond Together and Stella? So the video that I just showed you and the listening activity comes from a resource that's called Richmond Cartoons. However, Stella is the name of the full platform. This is the learning platform. So it's very different. One is a content and the other one is the whole learning environment that lets us create our classes, organize them, have our students here all together, create these activities, these forums. This is all taking place in Stella. Stella is the place that houses all these resources and contents that we find here in Tema. I don't have much time to show you everything that you have here, but I do encourage you to take a little bit of a dive and find all of the stuff that we have here. We have interactive activities, we have tests, we have a lot of stuff that can be useful. And how would you do it is in the activities, you add a new activity, click here on Evaluable, and you just fill out this form here. For instance, we select the material, maybe it's a listening activity like I did before. I write my instructions, set up a start and an end date. And this button below here, it's very important because here is where I add the resources that I had in the temas section. So the Richmond cartoons, the interactive activities from each of our series will be here. So that's just a little example. Now to close, I'm going to go back to my PowerPoint really quickly. I'm going to let you go soon. I hope I'm not keeping you too long. So this was our table. We saw the Edpuzzle, Google Forms, ClassDojo, Socrative. I'm not showing you poll everywhere. I just wanted to mention that this is also another tool that we can use for formative assessment in poll taking. You've probably seen it before. We've used it a lot in our webinars. Otherwise, you can explore it. It's also an opportunity to do some self-learning a little bit. We also saw the discussion forums in Stella. In Stella, we also have the ability to give grades and give feedback when we receive an activity from a student. And well, we also have English Attack. English Attack is a very interesting and amazing platform or additional platform that we access within Stella. I'm just gonna show you very, very quickly. Here we have a teacher, user, and in here it is English Attack. This is if your school has this service added in their contract and you have it available. Not every school will have it, but if you do, I'm just gonna show you the concept, the main concept. Here we have some videos, very short scenes from videos that are classified in different English language level, by topic, by interest. We have lots of ways of classifying and finding the right video for our students, from movies, TV series, many, many things. And once I find one that I like, I can assign it to a teacher. How to lose a guy in 10 days, let's say it's this one. And I can have all these exercises that are comprehension exercises. So this is also an assessment of English learning. Oh, sorry. I was not showing you the correct window. Give me a second. I just need to get out of PowerPoint. Here we go. Sorry for the delay. So here we are. We have the video, some vocabulary, and some exercises down here that all relate to comprehension. What else do we have here? We have some tests. So this is another way of assessing our learners through assignments, when we assign one of these videos that we have available. And I'm going to show you right now through tests. I go to assessment tests. And here I have a class already created. If you have questions about how to handle this, if you have it available in your school, the right way to ask your questions would be through your coach. So if it's me, then later you can write me on WhatsApp, give me a call, I'll help you. Or if it's somebody else on our team, then you can ask them the specifics. I'm just gonna show you very quickly how it is. I already had a class created and I chose an assessment. This is the process. I choose an assessment test and I add it to a class. And I'm going to click here so that you can see what an assessment test is. Here we go. It includes 3 video tests that includes many of the comprehension activities that we were looking at. In this assessment, the students won't be able to replay the video, they can just see it once, and they have a time limit for each step, so they need to be focused. And then at the end of the test, they receive as a result what level of English they are exhibiting at the moment, from an A1 level to a C2 level. So this is very useful. This is a more formal type of assessment, because it's comparing our students against a standard, which is what the framework of reference is identifying as these 4 English levels. And then we can compare students with each other and see how they are in terms of their English level. So English Attack, it's an awesome tool. Maybe we'll have another seminar more specific about that. And lastly, I'm just going to come back here to our conclusions. I hope the tools were very useful to you. And I want to just see the chat real quick. Do we have to create the questionnaire? If you are referring to the Google form, yes, I created it in Google form. But as I showed, I based myself on an instrument that was already available in Stella. I just transformed it into a Google quiz so I could have access to the data and collect it more easy and quick. You can also create from scratch your own Google quizzes and share them in Stella. Okay, so as a conclusion, I encourage you to remember that the word assessment comes from the Latin term ad sedere, which means to sit down beside. Why am I mentioning this? Because when we assess, It should feel as if we are pulling up a chair next to our individual student. We're getting down on their level and we're putting ourselves in their corner to give them the information that they need to succeed. So this is a very important perspective to have when thinking about assessment. Distance learning and flipping the classroom puts students in a position to learn in improved ways, but without assessment, they will not reach their full potential. We also want to get student feedback on the technology that we use, especially if we are new at virtual learning. We want to ask them what worked, what didn't, and implement changes. And lastly, if you were here from the beginning and you heard me discuss Hattie's meta study, if you want to know what was the biggest predictor of student achievement, number 111 in the ranking at the top, it was student expectations. What does it mean? It means that children themselves are the most accurate when predicting how they will perform. They have an idea in their head. Oh, I think I'm going to get an 8 as a grade, and they are mostly accurate. So how is this useful to us teachers? We can use this information by finding out what the students' expectations are and pushing them to exceed them. Even just by asking students to write down what their expectations are for an upcoming test, an upcoming project or assessment, something big, then we can see what their expectations are and use this information to engage them to try to perform better. So this is also another part of our role as teachers. We are giving our students confidence, motivation, and helping them believe in themselves and do better. And it's very, very cool to me to think that there is research that actually tells us that this is useful to them. Just making them believe in themselves and believe that they can do better will have an impact on their outcome. Okay, so I hope this was useful to you. I'm sure very quickly we will be getting the poll that we do at the end. If you have questions, you can reach me at the chat. I'm showing here quickly some references and just a thank you. Thank you for being here and participating.
Thank you, Sophie. Thank you a lot for your valuable information, and it was really interesting. Again, thank you all the participants for being here. Hopefully this webinar, and I'm sure it was, very useful for you. I'm sure you will apply many of Sophie's advices in your classes. And well, don't forget, just a few seconds, a survey will appear. Ivan will help us to put the survey in your screen. There it is now. And please, if you could help us answering, we would like to know your thoughts, if you liked it or not. I'm sure you did, but please answer the poll before you leave the webinar. Thank you very much. Thank you, Sophie, again for your participation.
Thank you everyone. I'm sorry for taking a few extra minutes. I hope the webinar was useful to you. I'm getting some feedback here on the chat, so thank you for your lovely comments. I'm glad you're finding it useful.
Please don't forget, thank you.